Claire, so interesting to see Mark McGowan. He lifts the borders, but at the same time, the message is saying, look, I'll close them in a heartbeat if necessary. That strong rhetoric continues, obviously, with the March election in mind. He's so popular and largely on this issue.
Yeah, I mean, I guess based on that logic, you would say that he could afford to go against popular opinion here and there around borders, because as we know, with WAGSET and the broader sentiment in WA, it's hard to find a group in Australia that are more supportive of, the shutters up, we look after our own approach. And, he has been put on the ropes a fair bit about his decision in Parliament, in budget estimates, and of course, the pretty high-profile case brought on by Clive Palmer. So he's had to defend this decision through and through at every step of the way. What I think is interesting about his economic response is, if you think about, Australia's economy, he has this huge wealth of resources there that he's able to essentially lock down the economic activity within the state by closing the borders. So what was previously a bit of a fly-in, fly-out operation across all of that oil and gas and massive amounts of resources across the state has essentially had to be, locked down within the state. And we've seen a few resources companies subsequently announce that they're moving to a full-time, permanently Perth-based employment regime.
Yeah, Fiona, we've spoken to the business community there quite a lot over the last month or so in WA, and they've been pulling their hair out basically because not only will Mark McGowan not listen to their concerns, but the electorate love him and love his stance. And as I said, as he's lifting the border, the message is still, yeah, I'm great, it's great that people are being reunited and so on, but don't forget, I'll put the border up in a flash if need be.
Yeah, absolutely, Kieran. And look, I mean, we've seen this ploy play out in various elections over the last 12 months, be it what we've seen in Canberra, what we've seen in Queensland, of course, the return of Jacinta Ardern in New Zealand. So you can appreciate why, when the runs are on the board for this type of tactic or this type of mechanism, why it would be attractive for Mark McGowan to run that type of line. But of course, you do have to look at what's happening with the fly-in, fly-out tradies that have been working up in the mines and the engineers that are up there, that some of them haven't been home for 9 months on end. There's also a whole range of crazy work conditions that are going on. I mean, things like 10-week rotations, 10 weeks on, 10 weeks off. And within the 10 weeks off, you've got to quarantine for 2 weeks, and then you stay home for 6 weeks, and then you get back to Western Australia and have to quarantine for another 2 weeks, and then you're there for 10 weeks. I mean, so these are some of the really destructive mechanisms that are going on. But the other point I think that's really important to look at today is, of course, the SNP has also downgraded its ratings for the two biggest economies in Australia, being New South Wales and Victoria. Yeah. Now, look, I think Victoria having a pretty big jump downwards is probably expected with the second COVID relapse that they had and the whole state being shut down. New South Wales is a little bit more of a shock. And look, I think it's hard to not draw the comparison that if some of these borders of these state jurisdictions were not locked down as hard and fast as they were, would be looking at two of our biggest economies in this situation, and the fact that this is going to have to inevitably flow onto the federal economy as well. So, look, you can reward for political on the politics on one side, but there is actually a very big personal and economic knock-on for the country at the other end.
Yeah, that's true. I guess the other thing is, though, when you talk about a comeback, as the government is, Claire, so much of it is built on confidence and that health story that people are actually going to spend again. I mean, today there are less than 50 cases in Australia, 29 of which are in hospitals right now. So you're talking only 16, 17, and they're all in hotels. So that the confidence that breeds in terms of getting people out there and so on, that also has a huge economic impact. Yeah, and we're seeing that in Victoria with further easing of the restrictions yesterday as people are able to move about the community more without masks and coverings. And I think that, nothing better, bolsters your confidence than that heading into Christmas. And I'm sure we'll see a bit of a pent-up
demand there around retail spend. On the AAA credit rating in Victoria, as Fiona says, no surprises there. They've obviously taken on a significant amount of debt to service their massive infrastructure spend. I think, the New South Wales Treasurer, Perrichet, should be credited for doing budget repair during this process as well. He has a not insignificant budget repair underway. I think it's worth reminding folks who do look at that decision today in Victoria that Treasurer Palace also has a efficiency review underway, albeit it has been paused until the next budget. So there is an orderly approach here around, yes, dealing with the health implications of the disease, then looking at stimulus and then moving on to, essentially budget repair.
Fiona, the other point to make right now is, and as you said, it certainly has the economic flow on of the lockdowns, but when you look internationally, we are a standout, aren't we, in a health sense? That's why we've got tens of thousands of Australians wanting to come home, basically stranded on their way home. They desperate to get home by Christmas. This is a point that Labor's been pushing quite hard in Parliament today, Fiona.
Yeah, absolutely they have. And I also thought it was interesting, the comment that's come back that the Australians wanting to come home now is more than what it was in September. I mean, why wouldn't you want to be here? Seriously, summer's a great time of year to be in Australia alone, let alone the fact that essentially we've got the virus beat here, 2 weeks quarantine and you get to get your life back. So why wouldn't you want to be in Australia right now? Why would you want to stay overseas? So look, I can appreciate and I am very sympathetic to Australians desperate to come home. But Scott Morrison did put the call out back in March. If now is the time to come home, and to leave it 9 months, there's been plenty of opportunity to get home. I do hope that there is more ability to get people home, that we are able to move through hotel quarantine to be able to do that. But look, Kieran, even over the weekend, look at what happened in New South Wales, 2 more people out of hotel quarantine. It's great to get people home, but geez, I don't want to do it for the sake of shutting down a whole capital city again. We've got to do this safely and we've got to make sure it's done right.
Yeah, fair point, Fiona. Thanks.